Have you ever felt the magnetic pull drawn into the heart of someone distant? A man who hides behind silence, yet watches you with the hunger of a soul unmet? He says little, but the space between his words calls to something ancient inside you. If you're an empath, you know this dance. The avoidant man doesn't chase, he resists, retreats, and yet he always returns. But what begins as soulful gravity often ends in emotional devastation. Why? Why are avoidant men drawn to empaths? Only to unravel them? To answer this, we must look not at modern love, but into the unconscious, into what Carl Jung called the shadow, the animus, the projection, the wound. These are the 8 reasons why avoidant men are drawn to empaths, and then why they destroy them. The mirror of the shadow. Carl Jung taught us that every person carries a shadow, the part of ourselves we disown, repress, or fear. For the avoidant man, his shadow is emotion, need, fear of abandonment, longing, dependency. And then he meets the empath, a woman who holds space for all he cannot face. She feels what he won't admit. She senses the grief he buried beneath ambition, the fear behind his aloofness. To him, she becomes a mirror, not of his light, but of what he has hidden from himself. He is drawn like a moth to the flame, but the mirror she holds frightens him. So he pulls away again and again until the mirror shatters in her hands. The sanctuary he never had. From a young age, many avoidant men are taught to survive, not to feel. They were punished for needing too much, praised for independence, rewarded for silence, and then they find her, the empath. She is presence. She is nurture. She listens to what he doesn't say. She senses the wounded boy inside the man, and for a moment he rests. But rest becomes discomfort. Comfort feels like danger, because deep connection reawakens what he spent a lifetime burying. So he flees the very sanctuary he craved. And in the process, he leaves her questioning her worth. The archetype of the healer. Empaths often carry what Jung would describe as the archetype of the healer, an unconscious compulsion to fix, to mend, to pour love into broken places. The avoidant man, often unknowingly wounded, feels this, not through words, but through energy, through her gaze that sees through him, through her presence that says, "You don't have to pretend here." And so he attaches not to her, but to the healing she represents. But when she begins to need in return, when the healer asks to be held, he recoils, because he was never here to love, only to be soothed. The projection of the divine feminine. Jung believed that every man carries within him an unconscious image of the feminine, what he called the anima. And when he meets a woman who reflects that image, he projects onto her not just love, but salvation. The empath often embodies this projection. She feels mystical, pure, intuitive, a living symbol of the inner feminine he has not yet integrated. But projection is dangerous. He loves the idea of her, not her, in her fullness. So when she reveals her own wounds, her limits, her flaws, he is disillusioned. The goddess becomes human, and he turns away, confused and ashamed of his own longing. Emotional intimacy feels like invasion. To the empath, intimacy is home. To the avoidant man, it is trespass. When she leans in, he freezes. When she asks, "How do you feel?" he hears, "You are weak," because his inner narrative, shaped by past wounds and conditioning, says, to need is to lose power. To be seen is to be exposed. To be close is to be trapped. And so he retreats into silence, into logic, into work, into other women. He does not do this to hurt her. But the result is the same. The empath who opens her soul feels like she was punished for loving deeply. The wound attracts the wound. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life." and you will call it fate. Empaths are not immune to wounding. In fact, many become empaths because of trauma. They learn to read the room to survive, to feel others' emotions to stay safe. And so, when the avoidant man walks in, detached, unreadable, needing nothing, he feels oddly familiar. He reminds her of the father who never saw her, the mother who was emotionally distant. It feels like fate, but it's not. It's a trauma bond, and trauma bonds don't heal, they repeat, until one awakens. The fear of losing himself in her depth. The empath doesn't skim the surface. She dives, she touches the soul. She asks, "Who were you beneath the mask?" And this terrifies him. Because no one has ever asked, not really. Her presence awakens parts of him long buried. Creative urges, old grief, forgotten dreams. And while this may sound beautiful, for the avoidant man, it's too much, too fast. He fears drowning in her ocean. So he builds walls, confuses her with mixed signals, withdraws when she comes closer. It's not rejection of her, it's protection of him. He mistakes depth for control. Finally, the avoidant man often misinterprets emotional depth as manipulation. Because to feel something so strongly in a world that taught him to feel nothing feels like losing power. He sees her vulnerability and suspects strategy. He feels her intuition and suspects surveillance. He has not yet differentiated between control and connection, between safety and surrender. So he lashes out, sabotages the relationship, paints her as too emotional, too intense, too much. And in the end, he walks away from the very woman who held the key to his healing. So what now, dear empath? What do you do when your gift becomes your curse? Carl Jung would tell you this: the key is individuation, to step out of the cycle of losing yourself in others and begin the sacred task of returning to your own center. Stop rescuing the drowning if it means you forget how to swim. Stop pouring your light into men who have no intention of stepping out of their shadows. This path, your depth, your knowing, your love, was never the mistake. But without boundaries, your gift becomes a burden. Individuation is not selfish. It is the soul's rite of passage. It is choosing to see your own wounds as worthy of healing. It is realizing that your power was never in how much pain you could hold, but in how bravely you could let go. You do not exist to be a healing station for the emotionally unavailable. You are not a mirror for a man who refuses to look. You are a soul, sovereign and whole. And any man who cannot meet you there is not your fate. He is your initiation. Let him go, let him run, let him retreat into silence. Because the man who is ready will not fear your depth. He will recognize it as home.